Hi, my name is Michael Chikeen. The smartest people I've met have one common belief, that us silly humans really don't know much. For example, we still don't know why planes stay in the air, or how Tylenol or even gravity works. Yeah, gravity. Look it up. In today's distracted, clickbait, misinformation age, I wish we could all be less certain, more humble, and a lot more curious. Admittedly, I've been known to struggle with all three. So no more, no less, this show is my attempt to be that change. Thanks for joining me, and here we go. Hey everybody, welcome back to No More, No Less. I'm Michael Chikeen, and today in the virtual studio, I have with me Robert Hunt. Robert has become the accountability guy. He's a co-author of the book Nobody Cares Until You Do. He's a business owner in the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area and helps leaders remove the things that keep them from being their best. He's an executive coach who's been running CEO groups in the Dallas area since 2013, and he brings that experience and wisdom to help people reach their goals. Today, we're going to be diving deep into the waters of accountability, and hopefully at the end of this conversation, me and all of you listening will be a little less likely to BS yourselves and myself and can get out of our own way to get closer to our dreams and the people we want to be in the world. So without further wait, Robert Hunt, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a wonderful introduction.
Now, tell me about the moment, how and why you decided to write this book on accountability and even where the title came from.
Yeah, that came from our journey in 2000, starting in 2019, where we looked at our lives and we realized we weren't happy with our lives. And we whiteboarded this whole thing, my wife and I, as my business partner. What do we want this year to look like differently than last year? And one of the things we came up with was that the lack of satisfaction was really blamed on us, that we were the cause. And we had always looked at things and blamed things and made excuses and had reasons why we wouldn't do this or that. But at the end of the day, it was really us. And so we decided, hey, if by the end of 2019, we can't fix this problem. And our problem was that we owed $90,000 in debt. And that does not include the house or the cars. And so we said, this is just killing us. I don't like living this way. We fight all the time. It's not good for us and our future. So through that year, we worked really hard to try and get things turned around. The business was doing okay. It was struggling up and down, but we continued to spend like we were millionaires and we weren't. And so by the end of 2019, we realized, listen, we need to pull the trigger and do this. We need to own this. So we sold our house and we took all the money out of the equity of it and paid off all our debt and moved into this house that we're living now. And we rent. And we use that to start over. So by April of 2020, when COVID had shut down the world, we were debt free. And the peace that I felt in my life as I removed the thing that was keeping me from really having joy and peace in my life, the debt, it freed me up to think healthy again. And I started looking at everything in my life with confidence and with there's no risk because I have no debt. I wouldn't want to say something to a customer because what if I lose them as a customer? And I don't want to challenge anybody. Well, that's what I do for a living is I challenge people. I had lost my mojo. And so gaining back that swagger and confidence by removing the things that were keeping us from being our best allowed us to look at our marriage, how we raise our kids, our health, our finances, everything, and our faith. It was just all weird versions of what we wanted it to be. And so we walked that journey and we began to build things back up and be intentional. And so we wanted to create a book that would tell that story. My friend Salem Thine is also a client of mine. And we have been talking about accountability, how it changes our lives. And so he agreed to support the effort and to write the book with me and share his stories as well as mine and my beautiful wife, Kathy's. And so that's what the book is about. It's about this idea of learning what it is to be free through accountability, recognizing the times where you play a victim that you don't recognize you're being a victim. And then to get to that turning point where you look at your life and you go, look, nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're fat, broke, unhappy with your marriage. Nobody cares because they got their own junk to deal with. Nobody cares about anything unless you care enough to do something about it first. And then when that happens, people come around and rally and support you and care for you. But you got to care about it first. That's the turning point. When you say that to yourself, that's when you begin the journey to accountability.
Right. I really like that last part about because right when I was thinking of that, I wasn't so like the fan of like nobody cares at all. But I like how you've turned it that if you start caring about yourself, other people will show up in your life to support you, because
Yeah.
it's not like your loved ones don't care about you. Of course they do. Of course they want to see you be healthier. Of course they want to see you thrive. Of course they want to see you have these good relationships. But if they seem that you don't seem to really give a shit about yourself, then like it's like, they're not going to pour any from their cup into yours when you keep throwing it out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way of saying that. Yeah, no, that's true. And we titled the book "Nobody Cares" to get people's attention. It was going to be called "Peak Accountability: The Journey from Victim to Victor," and we thought no one's going to read that book,
Yeah,
and
this is way
so
better.
just nobody cares, and that is the turning point. I used to say that to my son. My son James. There's a lot of stories about James in the book about as a young man he would blame and make excuses, and his stories are emblematic of the way that I looked at my life. But as an adult, as a parent, I can look at him and go, James, you're not owning this, dude. That's accountability. It's the simplest terms. Accountability means you own it. And when he'd say, well, my teachers are this, and my coach won't let me play, and blah, blah, dude, who cares? Someone else is out there day and night practicing and pushing themselves, and they're getting playtime. So if you're not getting as much playtime as you want, don't come back and tell me the coach is unfair to you. Earn it. Do something about it. Be the hard, tough driving guy he can't resist, but to give you more playtime. So I've just looked at how many times in my life I was being a victim and I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
And I put all these little warning signs and awareness tools in the book so you can realize when you've been caught up at a time of being a victim instead of being accountable.
Right. Yeah, I really like that. The last little while, I don't know what sprung it, but I've been thinking about this idea of being a victim versus having agency. And I've spoken to a lot of friends and family members. We had this conversation about how important agency is, to think that we have agency in certain scenarios in our life. And
How do you
something
use
I
that
like to
word
hear,
agency? What does that mean to you when you use the word agency?
agency is that like I can have control over more parts of my life than I think. And when I think that if I come from it from a victim mindset, that I'm always put upon, I'm always a victim of circumstance, I'm a victim of certain people in my life, I'm a certain victim of certain relationships, then I really have no agency or the ability to affect change in my life. But the second I turn on a switch that I say, yeah, but I can be an agent of change in my own life. I can take action. I can stop talking to this person. I can stop putting money into this business and effort into this relationship or whatever. I can make change. Then it pulls the lever that I can, then I like your shirt, even that I care about my own life to do things opposed to just wait for other people to
Yeah.
save me from it.
All right. So we say in the book that when you take accountability for everything in your life is when you gain the power to change anything in your life. And we've seen that in our own lives when we play a victim. And here's the signs you're playing a victim. When something comes up and you realize, oh, that's my thing. The first thing you do is blame. And we blame people and the system and all these things. We blame God. We're angry at everybody. And blame just makes us angry. If that doesn't work, we make excuses. Well, this guy didn't call me back. Well, the system's broken. Well, my parents didn't love me. Okay. These are all excuses, but you're still screwed. And
Right.
excuses just give up the will to try to do anything about it because that's what it is. And if that doesn't work, then we say we can't. Well, I can't sell my house and start over. That'd be humiliating. I can't just give up everything and go. Yeah, you can. You can. Some people will say, I can't take a job that I really love to do the thing I really love the most because it won't pay me enough. Oh, you can live. You can live as cheap as you want to live. Maybe you don't have cable or a gym membership. Maybe you do drive a beater. But at the end of the day, it's your choice. You can do it. The real answer is you won't. When you say I
Right.
can't, if you replace that with I won't, then people look at you like, well, that's kind of weak. But if you say I can't, they go, oh, yeah, I get it. So can't takes away the power again. And then the
Yeah.
last one, we just wait and hope it gets better. And people understand wait and hope. Even those of us who are Christ followers, we look at this and go, wait upon the Lord. Hey, the Lord expects us to do stuff. And I think it's in Isaiah. He says, "No one else has a God like our God who acts on our behalf. He acts on our behalf as we actively wait for Him to show us what's next. We don't sit there and go, 'What do I do?' It's like the helicopter. What's that story with the guy, the flood coming? He gets on the roof of a house and he's calling out to God, 'Save me, save me!' And then
Right.
the boat comes, and goes, 'Get in!' He goes, 'No, God's going to save me.' And the helicopter comes in, 'Get in, God's going to save me.' No, and then he dies and goes to heaven. He goes, 'What happened to you, God? Where were you?' And God goes, 'Dude, I gave you a boat and a helicopter. Where you been?' And I think
Right.
that's us. Sometimes we just sit around waiting for God to fix our problems, but He wants us to be active in our faith. And so that all those things combined into these times we play a victim, and we're not victims. We may have been victimized. We may have had a really crappy situation happen or a really unfair thing happen. Okay, it happened. Now what? Now you own it and you figure out, what am I going to do about it? That's accountability.
Right. Well, that there's a lot in this, and something that I wanted to bring up, because so one thing is, I think if someone was a victim for something and they have a lot of shame about something, even if it was something traumatic in their life or just shame for who they might think they are or whatever, I think the more we don't own it and the more we keep it inside, I
Yeah,
think it
it's
makes
the
this
worst it
big
gets.
darkness monster
Yeah,
grow and grow and grow. Or
yeah,
if you start saying like, well, I did this, or I had this part of my life that was really bad, but I'm doing my best, I think it's inspirational to everybody, and
it
it
is.
gives it a lot less power. But
It takes away the power. That's right.
right, and because one thing that I wanted to make sure we discussed is, again, that the idea of the victim mindset that I've been playing with, this concept is, I think there's a big difference between somebody saying I was a victim and I am a victim. I think those are two very, very different people, and I'd love to
Uh,
hear what you
Do you
think
think
about that.
people really say I'm a victim? I think they may
Hmm.
have said that I've been victimized, but no one admits that they're acting like a victim. I just, who
Right.
would say that? Yes, I'm a victim, and maybe there are some
Well,
people.
fair enough. I think I mean it more in like the mindset. I think
Yeah,
some people would think that I was a victim of this, let's say, abuse, oppression, all of these terrible things, war, whatever. Then I think there's people that will think I am a victim, and there's something that
right.
runs in the software in our head. And I think I've had this in different parts of my life as well that I've had to overcome. That you think that if we have software that's continually telling us that we are a victim, I think we will go and play out scenarios in which that
Yeah,
just becomes true. Like
yeah.
if you keep creating friction in your relationships and then it creates problems, and you'll be like, see, I'm the victim again. Everybody sucks. We're like, yeah, but
Self-fulfilling.
yeah, you're an asshole.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you keep telling yourself you are, the more you live like that.
Right.
The solution for all this is vulnerability. When you truly are honest about what's going on in your world and you tell other people, they have the opportunity to go, dude, that ain't true. But until you lay it out and someone to hear you say that, no one has any idea what's going on in your head. And so when we talk about accountability, we talk about, it doesn't work without vulnerability, honesty. In the book, we give people these two little wheels to fill out. It's called the satisfaction assessment. And we ask you, hey, go fill out this and declare honestly, where are you not satisfied in your life? You're in your personal life, your marriage, your health, your faith, your finances, your career, in your business life, your team, your marketing brand, the structure of the organization, all those pieces. You have a chance to declare it with honesty, since it's just your private assessment. Where are you not satisfied? And then the question is, okay, so now what are you going to do about it? And that's where we realize we're being a victim, because you say, well, that's not my fault, or I can't do that. And whether it's your business life or your personal life, it's still the same thing. You need to own it. Maybe it's going to be a really hard journey for you to fix these things, but it's a hard journey staying as a victim too. And it's up to
Sure.
you. You want to have a hard journey on a life towards a victorious lifestyle, or you want to have a hard journey staying as a victim.
Right. Yeah, what is like, you pick the pain that you can live with, and you can work through that. But
Yeah,
it's I think yeah, I think it is really difficult, and I think you're right that most people don't know that they have this idea of this mindset that they are a victim. Because I don't want to dismiss the fact that there are real victims out there. There are
absolutely.
people victims of injustice, both like physical, economical, whatever you want to say. Those things are real things. And
Absolutely.
I don't like when there's a lot of this thing in the zeitgeist that says like, oh, you can overcome everything just with a different mindset. I don't think that's always true. But I think in many scenarios, if we would think like, especially if you're living, obviously if you're living in a country that is, free, like the US, Canada, Western society, even a lot of other countries, you can make a real difference just by trying to better your scenario, better your situation on your own, even if it's, romantically, your relationships, or your economic. I think there's, especially with the internet, there's just so much opportunity out there. And I'd love to hear maybe some of the stories that you have from people you've worked with where you've seen them continually jump in front of themselves to block their progress?
Yeah, we do it. We are self-sabotaging. I could tell you on a personal side, and I can tell you on a professional side some stories. My clients are all business owners and CEOs here in the DFW area, and I've watched them as they try and run a business and the challenges they face. And sometimes things are totally outside their control. Nobody planned COVID, right? Nobody had
Right.
that on their agenda, and yet they all had to survive it. They all had to figure out, what do I do with this? And I don't want people to die. But if I send them home, they're not making money. If I just keep paying them and I'm not making money, I'm going to go broke and there won't be a company to have for them. So there was this really weird time of, this is not my fault. And so we just kept
Yeah.
meeting and talking about, okay, we get it. So what are you going to do about it? And if they're telling you you're an essential company and you can stay open, then you have to figure out how to stay open. And if they tell you that you can't stay open, you have to figure out, well, how do I care for my employees and not lose good people or leave them hanging? There was a lot of hard things to decide. But at the end of the day, the people who were willing to own it and be creative and to be vulnerable and share to the group, look, I've got this whole group of people who are engineers standing next to a bunch of people who are shop workers. And the shop workers have to be there, but the engineers don't. And so the shop workers are mad because they have to go out and face the potential of getting COVID, while the engineers can go home and do their work remotely, and it's not fair. And
Hmm.
how do we treat these people, and what do we do? And those kinds of situations that nobody could have ever planned for, they were a challenge, but we had to own it and we had to figure out a solution. The same thing
Right.
goes on the personal side, where you're trying to run your personal life, and all of a sudden your spouse says, "I don't want to be married to you anymore." And now you've got to figure out what to do with that. And whether you were a jerk or not, whether you were probably the best spouse in the world, but now you're at this place where you're losing your marriage. And you could sit there and say, "Hey, I'm being a victim here," but what about it? I mean, it's not going to fix the fact they don't want to be married to you anymore. What are you going to do about it? And those are hard decisions where I don't have a solution for you, but you do. You know what you can
Right.
do. I'm an executive coach. I never tell my clients what to do. I ask them enough questions to figure out, well, what do you want to do? Well, how do I support you in doing that? And that's the same thing with all of our lives. Whatever it is that you're dealing with, there is a solution. It might suck. One of the chapters in our book is called Embrace the Suck. Because once you get to the place where you say, nobody cares, I got to own this, you look at the reality of where you're at. I mean, really, really look at it, like standing naked in front of a 360 mirror and going, oh, geez, that's what I would look like. And that really acknowledging reality allows you to go, okay, this is where I'm at. And this might suck. It
Yeah.
sucked to have to sell our house. We had to tell our neighbors, yeah, we didn't manage our finances well, and we're selling our house to get out of debt. And they're like, oh, really? I had to tell my clients, even though I'm a business owner, I made really bad choices and I'm doing this because I had problems. And that sucked, and it sucked to go through all that, but we had a plan, and we found a solution and we made it happen, and it was awesome. And I don't regret it at all. And I own my life, I own my future. I still have challenges and problems, but I flexed my muscles of accountability. And then I started bringing that to my marriage, where we went to counseling and talked healthily about the things that had built up over the years. I looked at my health. I was 265, drinking bourbon and eating chips every night, because what do you do during COVID except snack and watch
Sure.
TV? And I'd gotten unhealthy, and I looked at that and cleaned that up, and it just bit by bit, that one thing had this ripple effect that empowered me to own everything in my life. And I'm better at it some in others areas than others, but I still own it all. No excuses. I'm working on it. I'm on the journey, and I'm continuing to get better.
That's amazing. Well, first, congrats that you've been able to do all that and be so open and vulnerable, but also accountable. I think like vulnerability and accountability, they're like different sides of the same coin.
Well, there one
Would
leads
you
to
say
the
that?
other. You can't be
Yeah.
accountable if you're not vulnerable. If I'm telling you, Michael, I'm really struggling with this, you can go, dude, how's that working? How are you doing with that? And you can encourage me. You could join me in the journey. You could share things and help me find ideas. But if I keep it to myself and I'm not vulnerable, you have no idea what's going on. There's
Right.
so many hurting people in the world, and they don't feel like it's safe to be real, because everything on social media is so fake. No one has problems. Everything's happy and good, and everyone's
Right.
rich, and everyone's marriage is perfect, and everyone's kids are great, and every meal you ever eat looks like fantastic. And it's all lies. And so it's hard to be vulnerable when you feel this pressure to be awesome and your life is not awesome. And most people's lives is not awesome. We have challenges. health challenges, relationship challenges, money challenges. It's real. And so we're not creating a world where people can feel like it's safe to be vulnerable. But what's your option? Own that cancer a little longer until it grows big inside of you and corrupts your whole heart and your mind, or get it out and say, this is a problem I've got, and find people who will rally around to support you. And there are people who will do that.
Right. I think you're completely right of that it becomes a cancer inside of you. It becomes resentment, it becomes fear, it becomes hate, it becomes isolation. I think we see a lot of these in these tenets of what we consider to be manly or to be a man, to just take as much punishment as you can without reaching out. And I think the saddest part of that is that it robs all of the people in your life from being able to help you and show you
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they love you. That's the saddest part. They interviewed boys, teenagers over like a decade, and what they found, like across races, socioeconomic status, is that all these boys wanted to have like more deeper, connected, emotionally centered relationship with their friends, but everyone equally thought that no one else did. And so
Isn't that
like it's
crazy?
just this tragic reality of like there's all these people that want to give love and receive love, but they think they can't because that's not the world we live in, and it's devastating. So I'm is there anything when you went through embracing the suck for all of your challenges that you had, did you have any revelations during that?
Oh my gosh, all the time. You become self aware and you peel something back that you weren't willing to look at before, which then opens up another thing and opens up another thing. It all stemmed really from this mindset of it wasn't fair. It wasn't fair that this happened. It wasn't fair that that happened. And the idea of fair. And
Mm,
I compare that to my faith in Christ, that a lot of times I look at things that aren't fair. How can God let people starve in a world? How can God let war happen? How can people have disease? That doesn't seem fair. Well, if I'm going to talk about what's fair, it's not fair that God would love the world that he created so much that he died for it. And then we reject him and ignore him. And that's not fair. So I had to come back to this idea of fair. And it's not fair that I get to live in America where someone has to live in some country right now that's being bombed, or their children are being stolen and put into the army or slavery, or women are sold off for slavery. I mean, it's just sad.
yeah.
It's not fair that I get to have a wife who loves me and cares for me. It's not fair that I have both legs and both arms when some people don't. There's a lot of things that aren't fair. So when I get all caught up in this mindset of, well, it's not fair that I lost my job. It's not fair that this guy has that house and I only have this house. Dude, get over yourself. You are blessed. No matter if you are watching this podcast right now, you're richer than most of the world because you have a way to watch something on some digital item and get the internet somehow. You have some money, and most of the world just looks for survival. So I think we need to be real about our journey and get off ourselves, because nothing is fair. But you're very blessed and you have a lot of good things going for you. Take that and run with it, and then use it to help other people. That's why I want to talk about this book. I want to help people understand the freedom that comes with accountability and the joy that your life can have as you embrace the stuff that you're facing and own it. It's way better.
Yeah, I love all of that. I think the thing that I found on my journey, because I didn't find entrepreneurship until I think I was in my late 20s, and I was and I went to go see a therapist because I felt completely lost. I'm like, my mother wanted me to be a teacher or a bank manager or something, these big institutions that were super safe, and obviously I don't blame her for that.
Oh yeah, banks
Um,
are safe. Yeah.
in Canada for sure. Those
Oh,
five banks will be
okay.
gone before after the apocalypse. Those things are going anywhere in Canada. But the thing is, I couldn't foresee a future in which I knew the next 25, 30 years of my life, and so that wasn't something that really occurred to me to do. And I went to a therapist, and she mentioned entrepreneurship, and I'm like, oh. And so I thought about it. I started reading about it. A friend of mine was taking that path, and looking back now, I realized that as I started moving in that direction, like taking courses on coding or marketing or copywriting, and like starting different things, many of which failed before I found something that did. And I would say most people were kind of like, I could see them thinking like, what the fuck is Mike doing? Is he insane? Like, just go get a job. but there were a few people in my life that were like super supportive and stepped out of the woodwork to give me more books to read, to take me to conferences with them, to meet people that were doing that stuff. And the path really does open as you start moving towards
as
something
you're open
that
to it.
as you're open to it. And I think and allow people to open a door for you, or to just say like, it's okay, keep going,
Yeah.
you're doing good. And again, it goes back to like, we really rob people from the chance to help us. Like, it doesn't mean handouts or to give you money, like all these. It just means to like help a friend, or to teach something new to someone who's coming up, as I would do now to people that are starting businesses, etc. And I don't know, how do you think about that? Have you seen that in your client work as well? That a lot of people, once they start accepting the things in their life that maybe they're standing in their way of, that they really start changing when they're like, okay, this is on me.
Yeah, I think that it's hard. It's hard. We're ingrained as a world to blame and make excuses for things. It's the normal way. It's the odd way to look at stuff and go, well, this is my problem. It is unique. And I think that's where leaders who have risen above the challenge have become that way because of the mindset that they own it. Great leaders, they're constantly learning and they're constantly making decisions, but they own it. And the world changes daily, hourly. My goodness. I mean, it's just the rapid change in our world. You can't know everything as a leader, no matter how smart you are. And so great leaders look at it like, I'm going to continue to grow and I'm going to continue to do my best. I'm build teams with people who are resilient and wise and are committed, but I'm going to own the outcome regardless. And I think when they do that, they rise above it because they never give up. Because if it's a bummer and things that happen that they didn't plan for, they own that. And there's empowerment in owning it. You don't feel like everyone has control over you. Think about it. If everything that happens to you, you're a victim. Everything that comes your way is someone doing it to you and sticking it to you and unfair. You must feel miserable all day. But when you look at this and going, it's just like a football game. I might get knocked down. I might score a couple yards and then lose the ball. It's a journey. It's this process. I don't give up, but I'm always going to get hammered. I'm always going to get sacked. I'm always going to have someone that's going to take my pass. We just keep going. We just keep going. And those are the leaders that I've watched be resilient and rebound through the bizarre things, even the horrible things like a business partner who will steal from them and almost bankrupt the company. I've seen that happen, unfortunately, a few times, and it's real. The one you trust the most is the one that will take advantage of you. And so, how do you recover from that? Or you've had a business partner that was a spouse, and then you get divorced, and you got to break the company apart just to pay off the divorce, and
Oh,
then people lose jobs, and I mean, there's all junk that goes on. But either way, at the end of the day, those who are continually rising above it are the ones who own it.
right. Yeah, that I think that's another part about, well, I can imagine not fair if you're in a business and things are running well and you have your business partner who's just siphoning off funds. That's next level anger. But I imagine it makes a real difference when you're in a relationship, either to keep it afloat or improve it, or someone's ended a relationship, for people to take accountability for what portion of the relationship they can be responsible for. Because
Or maybe
otherwise,
you
I've
just
seen
got
people
totally
stuck for
screwed.
years and years. Yeah, right. Yeah,
But either way, what are you going to do about it? I mean, you want to be bitter your whole life? I mean,
yeah.
I was married for 10 years to my first wife, and we had a 2-year-old kid. And one day at work, I was sitting there, and someone shows up and gives me divorce papers. And I come home at the end of the day, and the house is empty. And she split and took my daughter and went to go live with somebody else. And I was like, what the heck? This is so unfair. Now, I initially
Well, I
thought,
laugh because like, what the heck is such a soft response to that? What the heck?
that is a soft response. I'm sure I had other words.
Oh,
But
for sure.
at the time I had recently committed my heart back to Christ as I was seeking God and trying to understand that. And it was in May of 94 that I really submitted my will to Christ to really understand what it would be like to walk with God. And then in August of that year is when she split. And I was in the kitchen looking around at my empty house and going, Lord, this is the thanks I get for surrendering my life to you. And the Spirit of God just spoke to my heart and said, no, I was preparing you for today so that I would be walking with him and be close to him so I could survive it all. But I had to look at that moment and go, this is so unfair. And I had met a dude in college. I used to smoke weed with him at college. And he told me about how he used to grow mushrooms in Maui on cow pies and sell them to the tourists, and it paid his rent. And I remember thinking, I'll just go to Maui and I'll just grow mushrooms on, I don't know how you do that, grow mushrooms on cow pies, and I'll sell them to people and I'll make them pay my rent. And I remembered, wait, I have a 2-year-old daughter and she does not deserve to be screwed in this journey. And I don't know what the heck's going on, but I gotta be here for her. And that was the hardest days of my life. That was a year of horrible, horrible divorce. I went through a bankruptcy. It was just a miserable time. But I had a daughter I had to take care of, and I had to own it and fight for it because she needed me. And we have to look at the challenges we face and realize maybe it's not fair, but we still have a life to live. And if I want to be bitter and defeated, there's a spot for that. But I got a life to live, and people are counting on me, especially that 2-year-old girl. And I need to up my game and go figure out how to handle this. That's just life. That's how we conquer it. But we don't do it well alone. That's why I had to surround myself with people who would support me, where I
Yeah.
could be vulnerable, where they could encourage me. No one gave me a solution. No one took care of me. No one gave me the money I needed. It was my journey, but they cared for me and they prayed for me and it helped me. And I walked through it. And by God's grace, I came out as a better person. And then, gosh, 30 years later now, I have this beautiful wife I've been married to for 25 years. And we have a son of our own. And my daughter's 32 now, 33, lives in Austin, and she's married. And life goes on. As crappy as the world might seem right now today, it's a moment in time. And I bet a couple of years from now, you won't even remember today. Don't put too much pressure on the impact of one moment, and you give too small a value to the journey you're on and too much for the moment you're in.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that story because I think like I think everyone will go through moments like this that are quite low and that do have like there's cycles and everything. Even if life has been great, and then all of a sudden you have a bunch of illnesses in your family, that's not fair. It
Right.
wasn't fair if someone to lose their mother when they're young, or all of these things that we can go on forever for how unfair life can be. But on the other side of it, I think I've had moments like that as well, where you're just like, oh, these 6 months or whatever have just been beating the hell out of me. And I think if you stay angry and isolated and let that resentment fill your heart, I think it really ends up becoming what your life becomes.
It only
Because
hurts you.
I've seen people, in my sphere of like friends and family that like would go through a divorce, and then they're just angry for 30 years.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what it was like to go through such a situation, but you just think of like, this is such a good person. I would like them to not be angry and go through life like that, because like you said, like we're not alone. And I think a lot of people have this idea is that we do everything alone. We're born alone. We die alone. And I don't think that mentality is helpful, because
Oh,
for one, there's a kernel of truth in there. No one really knows you but you at the end of the day. But we're surrounded with people that are looking for connection, that love us, that want to be loved by us. And there's just so much community and support that can be found in life. I think thinking about the individualism part of it, I think we miss out on a lot of life in that
yeah, I think that's a bad
perspective.
narrative too. We're not born alone. We're born with our mother and father, or at least our mother. She was there for
Right,
sure.
right,
And there was probably
right.
a whole bunch of other people walking you into that world and caring for you from the moment you were born. And you couldn't take care of yourself for years, and they walked with you all that journey. And we're not going to die alone. There's going to be someone there in 99.9% of the cases. But the reality is that I'm better when I have someone else, because I'm not the person who knows me the best. I think I am, but I don't. I lie to myself constantly. What's going on in my head is such BS. And the only
That's
reason I know
fair.
it's a lie is because I write it down in the morning. I get up, I spend time with the Lord, and I'm reading scriptures, and I write down all these things that pop in my head. And some days I feel defeated before I even get off the couch. This day's going to suck. And it's not going to suck. So you need to write it down and go, why are you feeling this way? And when I write it down, I look at it and go, well, that's not true. But the things that are in our heads lie to us. The Bible says, be careful and guard your heart, because it lies to you. And so as you lie to yourself and you tell you this narrative that's destructive, if you put it on paper and you go, hey, look, this is how I feel, someone go, man, that's not true. But you can believe your head trash because it spends a lot of time. You've had a lot of time to own it. Bring out your junk. Let people see what you really think, and they'll go, no, dude, you're not like that. That's not you. It'll help you be honest because we deceive ourselves. We don't know what our real emotions are. We think we do, but they're wrong. They're twisted. And it's only by sharing them honestly with someone else that you can really get a perspective of this is what I feel, and decide that I'm lying to myself and get clarity. That's helpful.
Interesting. Because I would agree that there are thoughts we have that don't serve us. There's, anxiety becomes fear that is overactive. And you think, oh, my life's going to end if I do a speech in front of 100 people. That's not true. You feel like that. But I think there's also something that to be said that if we get better at accepting how we feel about things, then we can be more honest with ourselves. So I think there's a different side of that. Like, I don't know that our
That's
heart
true.
lies to us necessarily, but I think we do a pretty good job of denying how we feel. Because I think everyone on some level has a part in where they were taught to just deny how they feel about something growing up. I think we've been through generations of people that have been through poverty and war and all these things, and there were no time for feelings. It was like, where are we going to eat? How are we not
Yeah.
going to die? Whereas
Yeah.
and now I think we're in a time where we have the ability to start accepting, okay, how do I feel about this, and like understanding that, I think is the hardest part. There was a men's group I was in a couple of years ago, and one guy was in it, lovely guy. I remember him saying, he's like, okay, so I'm starting to try to accept how I feel about things, and now I have all these damn feelings and I don't know what to do with them all. and we all had a great laugh, because I think that is the central challenge of humanity sometimes, is that, like, yeah, we do have all these feelings, but sometimes we have to realize, okay, that feeling is fear that is reasonable, or that's a fear because I'm afraid of rejection, or all
Yeah,
of these all
we're
of
so
these things.
skewed. We're so skewed in our perspectives. I just don't feel that maybe it's just me. I don't think I do such a great job evaluating my own feelings and emotions. I have some feelings, and I'm a fairly intellectual guy, and I have pretty good emotional intelligence. At least I think I do. And then I tell my wife, "Here's what I'm thinking about," and she goes, "What is that about? Where does that come from? Well, this is how I feel." And okay, well, you're my wife. You're too close to the matter. I'll talk to Curtis, my good friend Curtis Gare. Curtis, this is what I'm thinking. He's like, that's not who you are. That's not, you've never said that before. Why are you feeling that now? Oh, you're being too nice. Let me, and I check with a couple of people, and there's a consistency that I have deceived myself with what I thought my emotions were. And so
Yeah,
at least for me in my journey, I spend way too much time spinning this negative narrative
yeah,
before any truth ever comes out of it. And we have a 100% success rate so far in our lives. If you're watching this podcast right now, you have survived everything 100%. Maybe it wasn't as easy as you wanted it to be. Maybe the outcome wasn't what you wanted, but you still survived it. And so I think that's very empowering to look at, well, what am I going to face? A divorce, a medical issue? And we're all going to get cancer and die. That's just kind of how the way of the world's going these days. So
yikes.
let's not be surprised that we're going to get sick and die. That's just life. Everybody dies. But when you look at it, there's nothing we can't survive. It might suck, but we'll get through it. And I think this is where we become so defeated that we hunker down in fear and we lock up. And then we're not willing to own it. And then we kick in the victim mode and we stay stuck. But if you are willing to be vulnerable and be honest, really honest with someone who cares about you, maybe even with a radical stranger, just some dude you've met somewhere, it's better than keeping the lie spinning around in your head. And I just
Yes.
have, for me, not done such a great job in that narrative. So I allow myself to be vulnerable to people like my wife and my good friends because I need that bounce off the reality check.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, that about not lying to ourselves. I think there is a proportion for however much you're lying to other people, you're probably lying to yourself equally or more,
Yeah, probably so.
to keep that identity in check, for I am this or I am that. Whereas I don't know. I think sometimes, like you said, it's just kind of facing that truth and that darkness to get to the other side. I mean, how would, so people watching this that really want to learn about accountability or for how not to play the victims, what are some of the easier levers that someone could pull in their life to try to help them be more accountable, or and to get out of this idea that they are a victim of their own circumstances?
There's a tremendous ripple effect in accountability. When you own something, the power and the freedom and the joy that comes from owning that will empower you to do more and more areas. In our world, we took the worst thing we had and we kicked its butt. And it was hard, but we realized we can own this, we can do this. And then we took it to every other aspect of our lives. If you will start with an awareness of where you're not satisfied, and then to look at what you're doing about it, whether you're blaming, making excuses, saying you can't, whatever, then you can have a plan and an opportunity to go chase something and work on it. You could even start with the simplest one. Maybe take the satisfaction assessment. Go to nobodycaresbook.com and take the satisfaction assessment for free. You don't even have to give us your personal information. We want to give you this because we want you to do it. Go to nobodycaresbook.com. Take the satisfaction assessment as a resource, and then look at that and go, okay, I'm not satisfied here. This one's a 2. I'm miserable about it. And this one's a 6. I'll start with the one that's a 7. I'm going to work on my health. I'm going to go to bed earlier, drink water, and cut out booze for a month. Some simple things you can take on, whatever it is, and see the power that comes when you own that. And that will fire you up and inspire you to take now the next one that might be a 6 that you're unsatisfied with. And then we'll keep working until we get really good at this, and then we'll tackle the 2. You can make it easy, little baby steps. But it starts with the reality that you do have the power and authority to take ownership over your life. You're not a victim. And when you start practicing this, even in the smallest way, it will grow and free you to tackle more and more areas of your life. And you will gain it bit by bit. I promise you, it happened in our lives. It's happened in Salem's life. And I get calls and emails from people all the time who are reading our book saying, I'm applying this to my life and it's changing my life.
It's so funny. I love that was all great. The reason I'm smiling is because at one point have you seen the movie Scrooged?
I
With
have
Bill
with Bill
Murray?
Murray. Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. I watch it every year. And at the end, when he's having his epiphany moment, and he's speaking to the television set, and he's talking about like embracing the idea of Christmas, and you'd be like, you'll be hungry for it. You want it in your life. You want it every day. And he's starting to tear up, and I felt that energy in what you're saying about accountability. You want to take accountability in your life. You want it every day. It'll make a difference. And like
Again with Bill Murray. That's pretty
that's a
awesome.
really good vibe to have for this, because I think a lot of people are scared to make decisions for themselves. I think it goes from people that I would say are high agency people that do make a lot of decisions, and then it goes all the way down to people that maybe have made some decisions in their life that have went wrong, and they're just really scared. And I think that's where some things like these personality quizzes, astrology, even religion, I think helps us to think, okay, well, how can I have some sort of guidance on this? And then there's better or worse for how these things I think affect our lives. But I always look back for when I took my first big trip to Europe with a good friend of mine. I was 23. I'd lived at home until then, mostly aside from university. Come from a big Italian family who they've just I love them, but they love unsolicited advice. And so like you live in that house and it's always you could do this, or why are you doing that? You should be doing that. And you know, it comes from a good place, but it's really hard to make these decisions for yourself when you're always told to do something else. And I remember on that trip, which was 2 months long, my friend who I traveled with really checked out for making decisions. So it was kind of all on me. And it was frustrating. But in those 2 months, I just realized, oh my God, I internalized I can make decisions for myself that turn out well, because if something fucks up, I can find a solution. I can
Right.
find a new
Right.
train. I can
Right.
stay here if I want to. And I came back from that trip with a sense of like peacefulness, but also power,
Yeah.
that I could do all of these things. And it connected me to your idea that once you start taking responsibility and doing little things in your life, it becomes a bit of a snowball effect
It does.
where you're like, oh, okay, I invested this thing. Oh, I started this business. It didn't work out, but you know what? It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Maybe I'll try another one. Or I fired someone I didn't want to, but I'm sorry, I didn't want to go through the process, but I had to, and I'm glad I did it. Okay, I can do this now in my business. So like, there's so many things that like once you start, I know how to say it, like standing up for yourself, then all of these positive things happen. Have you
Yeah,
seen a
that's
lot of that with
ownership.
your coaching clients as well?
Absolutely. Again, once you start the journey of accountability, you start to own things. It's easier to own more. You see that with confidence. I've already owned this. I can own that. And when you feel like this is too complicated or too scary, you continually go to the people you've been vulnerable with and say, "I'm really struggling with this. Help me get through my head trash." Or give me some encouragement, or share what you're doing. We need people who will speak into our lives, and that's why vulnerability is the key to accountability. But when people start to own stuff, it gives them a confidence and a hope that the things that they thought were impossible actually can be owned. And for us, when we were so heavy in debt, there was nothing we could do. We just stuck into that victim mode. Everything looked impossible. But when we conquered that, it gave us this confidence to go and press on to other things. And I think also by having a conversation with my clients and with some friends and said, "This is the person I want to be. Here's where I'm going. Will you walk with me?" And that's vulnerable. But if you really want to be your best, I mean, if you really, really, really want it, then you're going to have to be real. You're going to have to be honest with other people. No one's their best alone. We're always better in community. People see things that we don't see. People encourage us when we feel down. People warn us when we're about to do something. And you just have those buddies that when you go to hang with them, they can perceive what your heart is like without you saying a word. You walk up and you're like, "Dude, you okay?"
Yeah.
Because they can know your heart. And that takes time. It takes vulnerability of being real with people. But those people can help you from going the wrong direction if you are really willing to be real with them. We need to surround ourselves with people like that. That's part of the requirement of good accountability.
Yeah, I love that message as well. I mean, I think for people listening to that because I've been reading a lot of books on connection recently for some research I'm doing, and you see a lot of people that lead themselves down the ways to self-harm or at the very end of the road suicide, and a lot of them have said that they felt worthless or isolated or alone. And the researchers point was to say that it's not that these people were loners, it's that they were failed joiners. And that concept really has stayed with me in a profound way. And so to your point, I'd like to say that yeah, and if people are out there looking for people and saying, "Will you walk with me?" and they feel rejected, I would say don't stop looking.
Yeah,
Like
don't stop. That's right.
there are amazing people everywhere that are happy, that will be happy to walk with you, that will make you feel like. But we have to reach out to grab onto people. We can't join hands when we're like this, when our
Yeah,
arms are
and one of the
crossed.
things we talk about is that we say we can't, right? We can't in the journey to accountability is that you make excuse, you blame, and you can't. So you say, well, I can't reach out to everybody. I've pissed off everybody in my life. I've been such a jerk that nobody will talk to me. I get it. I know people like that. Find somebody. Go to the library and so find someone who's reading a book and go, "What are you reading?" "Oh, that's a good book. I like that book too." Make a new friend. Don't tell me you can't. It's really I won't. Because there's
Right.
always a solution. There's always some idea. I don't have to tell you what to do. You can figure it out. You're smart. But don't say I can't. Figure out some way to make it happen. There is always a possibility. And so there's never anything that you're going to face that you have to do alone. You just have to be creative about where to find people who will support you.
Right. I'd like to try to wrap up with the concept of can't versus won't, because I think that is a really big thing, especially now in this, I don't want to say hypersensitive, but hyper anxious sort of world that we're getting into, that I think social media has turned a lot of us into, that we have our little crack baby phones that are with us all the time, that we can't be, too far away from them. And I think I've even heard like younger cousins that are in their 20s to be like, "Oh, I'm so depressed over like something frivolous," or, "Oh, I can't do that. Oh my, I'm so anxious about that." And my friends and I'm in my early mid 40s, and we've talked about like, yeah, sometimes you just had to go and do these things, even if you're anxious to like go to a dance or whatever, because you couldn't stay on your phone. Like, you didn't want to stay home with your folks. So you had to leave the house and you had to embrace being around people, because the other options was just like, oh no. And so as teenagers we're going to be. And so I think this idea of like, oh, I can't do that. Oh, I can't like that. I would be mortified. I think that speaks to the can't. And I think your idea of accountability is like just making people understand that it's a decision, it's won't. And so I'd love to hear you speak on maybe some scenarios you've seen that in either your life or your coaching clients would be great for some examples, but I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, I would say in my own marriage that it was awkward to try and rebuild the relationship with my wife when we started owning stuff. And I didn't want to go to a counselor because I didn't want to be having awkward conversations with Kathy. That I felt that part of this stuff is really hard to talk about, and I didn't want to hurt her spirit, and I wasn't really confident myself. So it's humbling to go to a counselor. It's humble to go see a therapist. But that would be a great example where you say I can't, but you really mean I won't. And that to me was one of the turning points in our marriage, being strong again, is being awkward, but going and doing that thing. I think with my clients, I've watched them say, I can't fire this employee. They know all about our business. They're our number one salesperson. They're my brother. They've been here forever. Everyone knows. Whatever excuse they come up with, they say I can't. But when all of a sudden that person quits or leaves or dies or whatever happens, all of a sudden they realize, yeah, they can be without that person. So what they were lying to themselves about something they can't do happened anyway, and they survived. Or they finally got around to firing that person, and everyone at the company comes around and goes, "Thank God that guy's gone." And then they all start to rally around and help and do whatever it takes to get it done. That's one of the more common things I've seen with clients is they hesitate to fire someone they know needs to go. And we always talk about the time to fire someone is the first time you think about it. Not the first time they piss you off, but the first time that you go, I got to get rid of this person. Because then you begin this journey of trying to dance around the inevitable, and you make bad decisions, you do workarounds, and that person now becomes a cancer. And it's interesting how that person that you were thinking about firing all of a sudden has a discrimination lawsuit they file against you, or all of a sudden hurts their back in the warehouse, or all of a sudden, there's something that comes up and you waited too long and you caused another problem. And so I think that when we look at making decisions and we have a tendency to say, I can't, we just need to practice by putting the word I won't into that phrase. And if the true answer is I won't, it'll ring differently to you. I can't go to counseling. I won't go to counseling. And you look at that and it feels different. And the I won't says you're weak and that you won't own it. I can't goes, oh, bless your heart. You don't have the ability. And so I think it really allows us to take ownership if we just put the phrase I won't into everything we're thinking of. Anytime you say I can't, write it out. I can't blank, and then put the word I won't blank and see how it feels. And I think you'll find out that most of it is I won't, not I can't.
Right. That is perfect. I think that is the way to open the door, like you said, to everything else to create this windmill effect. So everyone, you can go to, what did you say it was? nobodycaresbook.com to take the assessment, buy the book, and we can all take a little bit more accountability in our lives. So Robert, thank you so much for being here. I've really enjoyed this chat, and thanks for your time.
And I also opened up a special domain just for your podcast. If somebody goes to nobodycarespod.com, I will mail a copy of my book to them at no cost. They just need to fill out the contact form and use the keyword no more. If they put no more, I will forward a copy of their submission to you for your information so you can keep in touch with them. But also, I want to have people who will read this book and change their lives. I'm happy to give a couple copies of the book out to people who are listening to this podcast today.
Thank you so much. So that's nobodycarespod.com/no more.
Oh, no,
KNOWMORE.
no forward slash. Just go to nobodycarespod.com. There's a contact form there and put in the code word in the comments,
Oh,
no
okay.
more. and put your address, and otherwise I got to email you back and ask for your address. But if you put that in there, I'll mail it to you and I'll copy you so you can have a record of who's listening to your podcast. It's a good way for you to measure the involvement of your audience in your podcast. But also, I want to be a blessing to people, and I really want them to own their lives. And I'm happy to donate 2 copies of the book.
That's amazing. So, okay, nobodycarespod.com and put in the keyword know more with your address, and you'll get this book for free.
I'll
Well,
mail
thanks
it
very
to you.
much. That's super generous. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
So, thanks for listening to No More, No Less. I appreciate the time you spent with me today. So, please subscribe and rate the show if you enjoyed it. It'll help me create more amazing content and get that next little bit of validation that I so deeply crave. If you did enjoy it, well, that sucks. But to make sure, I think you should listen to my next 10 episodes and then decide. I mean, come on. Rome was not built in a day. I'm just getting warmed up here, guys. So thanks again. See you next time.